My girlfriend demanded, "Stop talking to your therapist about our relationship. It's private." I was in therapy for depression after my best friend's suicide. I said, "I need professional help." She threatened to leave if I didn't quit. I said, "Then leave." When I chose mental health over her ultimatum. Original post. I, 27 male, lost my best friend to suicide 11 months ago. His name was, actually, I'm not going to use names here. I'll just call him my best friend. We grew up on the same street, played on the same little league team when we were 9. We're roommates freshman year of college because we requested each other. He was the best man speech I'd already started writing in my head, even though I wasn't even engaged yet. That kind of friend. He killed himself on a Tuesday in March. I found out from his sister, who called me at 6 a.m. because I was his emergency contact and the hospital had called her. I picked up the phone expecting it to be a butt dial because who calls at 6 a.m.? And instead I heard a sentence that split my life into before and after. I'm not going to get into the details of his death because they're not mine to share and because this post isn't about that. It's about what came after. Specifically, what came after I started trying to put myself back together and the person who was supposed to support me decided my healing was an inconvenience. I started therapy about 3 weeks after the funeral. I didn't want to. I'm from a family where men handle things, and therapy is what happens to other people. But I wasn't sleeping. I'd lost 12 pounds because food tasted like cardboard. I was showing up to work. I'm a civil engineer. I design drainage systems, which is exactly as boring as it sounds, and staring at my screen for hours without typing anything. My supervisor pulled me aside and asked if I was okay, and I said, "Yeah, I'm fine," and then went to the bathroom and sat on the floor for 20 minutes. So I found a therapist, guy who specializes in grief and trauma. I go every Thursday at 4:30. It's been 9 months. It's the hardest thing I do every week and also the thing that's kept me from going under. I talk about my best friend. I talk about the guilt because there's always guilt. The what did I miss? Why didn't I call that week? Could I have done something? I talk about my childhood, my family, the way I was taught to swallow everything. And yes, I talk about my relationship because my therapist isn't just there for one problem. He's there for my whole life. That's how therapy works. My girlfriend, 26F, and I have been together for 2 years. She was there when my best friend died. She came to the funeral. She held me that first week when I couldn't stop shaking. I will always give her credit for that. But somewhere around month 3, her patience for my grief started running out. It started with small comments. "You seem down again today," said with a sigh instead of concern. "Are you still thinking about that? Like grief has an expiration date. I just feel like you're never fully here anymore." Which was probably true, but hearing it as an accusation rather than an observation didn't help. I told her that therapy was helping and that I needed to keep going. She said she was glad. And for a while, things were okay. Then about 2 months ago, we were in the car driving home from dinner with her parents. Conversation was normal. And then she said, out of nowhere, "Do you talk about us in therapy?" I said, "Sometimes, yeah." My therapist asks about my relationships because they're part of my mental health. She went quiet. Not the comfortable quiet. The loaded quiet. What do you tell him? I don't know, general stuff. How we're doing. Things I'm working through. Things you're working through about US? About everything. He knows about my best friend, my work, my family, and yeah, my relationship. It's all connected. She didn't say anything for the rest of the drive, but I could feel it building, like humidity before a storm. A week later, we were eating dinner in my apartment, and she brought it up again. I've been thinking about the therapy thing. I'm not comfortable with you sharing details about our relationship with a stranger. Me, he's not a stranger. He's a licensed therapist. He's someone I've never met who now knows private things about me and about us. That's not okay. Me, everything I say in therapy is confidential. He can't tell anyone, and I'm not giving him a play-by-play of our arguments. I'm processing my life, which includes you because you're a big part of my life. I don't care about confidentiality. I care about the principle. Our relationship is between us, not us and some guy with a notepad. Me, the guy with the notepad, is the reason I'm still functioning. I was falling apart 9 months ago. You saw it. And I'm glad therapy helped with the grief stuff. But the grief stuff and our relationship are two different things. Talk about your friend, talk about your feelings, whatever. But leave us out of it. I took a breath. I can't do that. My therapist needs the full picture to help me. If I start censoring what I share, the whole process breaks down. Then maybe you don't need it anymore. It's been almost a year. At some point, you have to move forward. That sentence, at some point you have to move forward, hit me in a way I don't think she understood. Because my best friend's family hasn't moved forward. His sister still texts me sometimes at 2 a.m. because she can't sleep. His mom sends me photos of him on holidays. Moving forward isn't a switch you flip because it's been a convenient number of months. I said, I'm not quitting therapy. She said, then at least stop talking about us. I said, I need professional help with all of it. That includes us. She stood up from the table, grabbed her jacket, and said, if you keep going to that therapist and talking about me behind my back, I'm done. I mean it. I looked at her, and I said, then leave. She stared at me like I'd slapped her. I don't think anyone had ever called her bluff before. She stood there for about 10 seconds and then walked out. Didn't slam the door. Just pulled it shut quietly, which was somehow worse. I sat at the table for a long time after she left. Finished my food, even though I wasn't hungry because my therapist has been working with me on the not eating thing, and I'm trying to keep the habit even when everything in me says don't bother. Washed the dishes. Sat on the couch. Thought about calling her. Thought about calling my best friend, which I still do sometimes. Reach for the phone before my brain catches up to reality. Instead, I called his sister. We talked for about an hour. She told me about a grief support group she'd joined and that she thought I'd like it. I said I'd think about it. She said, please don't stop therapy. Please. You're the one person in his life who's actually dealing with this instead of pretending it didn't happen. That call is the reason I'm writing this. Because it reminded me of what the stakes actually are. This isn't about winning an argument with my girlfriend. This is about staying alive in the fullest sense, about not becoming the next person someone gets a 6 a.m. phone call about. So yeah, my girlfriend gave me an ultimatum, her or therapy. And I chose therapy. I don't know if that makes me a bad boyfriend. I don't know if I'm going to regret it. But I know that every Thursday at 4:30, I sit in a room with someone who's helping me carry the weight of a loss that almost crushed me. And I'm not giving that up because someone is uncomfortable with being mentioned in a confidential conversation. That's where I am. I'll update if things develop. Right now, I'm just sitting with it. Update 1, 8 days later. So things developed. Faster and uglier than I expected. After the then leave conversation, my girlfriend didn't contact me for 3 days. I didn't reach out either. I went to work, I went to therapy on Thursday, told my therapist everything, including the ultimatum, because of course I did, and I existed in this weird limbo where I wasn't sure if I was single or not. On the 4th day, she showed up at my apartment unannounced. I was making a sandwich, turkey on rye. She walked in, she has a key, and sat on the bar stool in my kitchen and said, I've been doing some research. In my experience, nothing good follows that sentence. I've been reading about therapy, and I think the issue is your therapist specifically. He's encouraging you to be dependent on the process. A good therapist will be working toward ending sessions, not keeping you hooked indefinitely. Me, he's not keeping me hooked. I'm going because I need to. You think you need to because he's conditioned you to think that. It's a business model. The longer you stay, the more he gets paid. Me, he charges $150 a session, $80 after insurance. He's not getting rich off my grief. I'm not saying he's evil. I'm saying he has a financial incentive to keep you coming back. And part of keeping you coming back is making you think your relationship has problems that need to be discussed in therapy. I put the sandwich down. Our relationship does have problems. You just gave me an ultimatum about my mental health treatment. That's a problem. See, that's what he wants you to think. He's framing normal relationship stuff as problems, so you keep showing up. I could feel my jaw tightening. My best friend killed himself. I've been struggling to function for almost a year. That's not a business model. That's clinical depression. I supported you through all of that. I was there, but this has gone past grief. You've made therapy your personality. It's all you talk about. My therapist says this, my therapist thinks that. It's like you're in a relationship with him, not me. That one stung. Not because it was accurate, but because it was designed to sting. She'd found the angle she thought would work, jealousy framed as concern. Make me feel like I was replacing her with a therapist. Make the healing process sound like emotional infidelity. I said, I'm going to keep going to therapy. That's not negotiable. If that's a deal breaker for you, then I respect your decision to leave. But I'm not stopping. She changed tactics. The tears started, and look, I can't always tell the difference between real tears and strategic tears, but these had a timing to them that felt rehearsed. I'm just scared I'm losing you. You're different since you started going. You're more distant. You question things you never used to question. I feel like he's turning you against me. My therapist had actually warned me about this. He said that sometimes when a person starts getting healthier, the people around them who benefited from the old dynamic get uncomfortable. Not because the therapy is bad, because the growth threatens the status quo. He wasn't talking about my girlfriend specifically, but when she said, you question things you never used to question, I heard it clearly. She preferred me when I was too broken to push back. I told her I loved her, but that the ultimatum needed to come off the table permanently. She wiped her eyes and said, fine, do whatever you want. She said this like she was granting permission, like therapy was something I needed her approval for. But I let it go because I was tired of fighting about it. For about 10 days, things were tense but stable. She was cold but present. We'd have dinner, watch TV, go through the motions. I kept going to therapy. She didn't bring it up again. Then she did something I didn't see coming. She called my therapist's office. I know this because my therapist mentioned it at the beginning of our next session. He was very careful about how he said it. He told me that someone claiming to be a concerned family member had called the office requesting information about my treatment. The office told the caller, correctly, that they couldn't confirm or deny whether I was a patient, and that all patient information was protected under HIPAA. My therapist said he was legally unable to tell me who called. But he said, and I could see him choosing his words, I want you to know that your treatment is confidential and no one outside this room has access to what we discuss. If someone in your life is trying to find out what you're sharing in sessions, that's a boundary violation worth exploring. He didn't say her name. He didn't have to. I drove home after that session with my hands tight on the steering wheel, calling my therapist's office, trying to get information about my treatment. That's not being uncomfortable with therapy. That's trying to monitor and control it. I called her. Didn't text, called. She picked up on the third ring. Me. Did you call my therapist's office? Silence. A long one. Her. I was just trying to understand what's going on with your treatment. I'm your girlfriend. I have a right to know. Me. You have zero rights to my medical information. Zero. That's federal law. Her. Federal law? Are you seriously quoting laws at me? I'm not some stranger off the street. I'm the person who held you while you sobbed for 3 straight days after the funeral. Me. And I'll always be grateful for that. But holding me while I cried doesn't give you access to my medical records. Those are separate things. Her. Your therapist is making you paranoid. Listen to yourself. You sound like you're in a cult. Me. I sound like someone whose girlfriend tried to breach his medical confidentiality. We're done. Her. We're not done. You don't just get to. Me, I do. I just did. I'll leave your key under the mat. Please leave mine in the mailbox. I hung up, and then I did something my therapist had been gently nudging me toward for months. I called my best friend's sister and asked her about that grief support group. She sent me the info within 2 minutes, like she'd been waiting for me to ask. The group meets on Tuesdays at a community center. I went to my first session the following week. But my ex-girlfriend? She wasn't finished. Not even close. Update 2, 11 days later. Last update. I know people want resolution, and I think I've got one, though it's not as dramatic as some of you might want. Real-life consequences don't come with a soundtrack. They just accumulate. After the breakup, the first few days were quiet. No texts, no calls. I thought maybe she'd accepted it. I went to my Tuesday grief group, which, by the way, is a room full of people who get it in a way that nobody else in my life does. There's something about sitting in a circle with 6 other people who've all lost someone to suicide and knowing you don't have to explain why you're still not okay 11 months later. You just are, and nobody tells you to move forward. The quiet broke on day 4. Not with a text from her, with a text from her older brother. I'd met him maybe 4 times. He's one of those guys who's always crossing his arms and standing too wide, like he's perpetually guarding the front of a nightclub. His text said, her brother, "Hey man, we need to talk about how you've been treating my sister. She's been crying every day since you broke up with her. Me, I'm sorry she's hurting. But the breakup was my decision and it's final." Her brother, she said you've been seeing some kind of shrink who's been messing with your head and turning you against her. Is that true? Me, I'm in therapy for grief after losing my best friend to suicide. She had a problem with that. I didn't. End of story. Her brother, that's not what she told us. Me, I know. Asked her what she told my therapist's office when she called pretending to be a concerned family member trying to access my medical records. He didn't respond. I found out later from a mutual friend that he did ask her, and she denied it. And he believed her, because of course he did. That's family. You believe your own and fill in the gaps later. 2 days after the brother text, I got a call from a number I didn't know. I answered because I thought it might be work-related. I've been waiting on a call back from a contractor. It was her mom. Her mom, "Sweetheart, I'm calling because I'm worried about you." Worried about me is a fascinating opening when someone is actually worried about their daughter's narrative. Me, I appreciate that. I'm doing okay. Her mom, "My daughter tells me you've been going through a hard time with your friend. I'm so sorry about that, truly. But I also heard you've been going to some therapist who's been influencing you." Me, influencing me how? Her mom, "Making you see problems where there aren't any. Making you distrust the people who love you. She said this therapist has basically brainwashed you into ending the relationship." I closed my eyes, counted to 5. Me, "Ma'am, my best friend killed himself. I was in a dark place. Therapy helped me survive that. Your daughter asked me to stop going. When I wouldn't, she called my therapist's office trying to get access to my confidential medical information. That's why I ended things." Her mom, "Well, she was concerned. When you love someone, you want to know what's going on with them." Me, "There are legal protections in place specifically to prevent that." She wasn't checking on me. She was trying to find out what I was saying about her in sessions. Her mom, "I think you're being very rigid about this. Relationships require compromise." Me, "I compromise on a lot of things in 2 years. My mental health treatment wasn't going to be one of them." Her mom, "My daughter is a good woman. She held you together during the worst time of your life." Me, "She did. And then she tried to take away the thing that was continuing to hold me together after she got tired of doing it. I don't blame her for getting tired. I blame her for trying to remove the replacement." Her mom went quiet. Then, "I hope you reconsider." Me, "I won't. But thank you for calling." That was 2 weeks ago. The call stopped after that, mostly. One more from the brother. This time angrier. This time with accusations that I was airing family business to strangers, meaning my therapist, and that I owed his sister a real conversation. I told him I'd given her a real conversation and that she responded by trying to breach my medical privacy. He called me dramatic and hung up. Now here's the part that actually matters. The part that isn't about her. Last Tuesday at Grief Group, I shared something for the first time. I've been going for 3 weeks, mostly listening, hearing other people's stories, getting used to the room. But this week, the group leader looked at me and said, "You've been pretty quiet. Do you want to share tonight?" I talked for about 6 minutes. I talked about my best friend, the real things, not the polished eulogy version. The way he'd text me memes at 3 a.m. The time we drove 7 hours to see a band we both liked, and the car broke down, and we sat on the hood of a Honda Accord on the shoulder of the highway eating gas station beef jerky while waiting for AAA. The fact that the last text I ever sent him was, "Dude, you have to try this new ramen place," and he never responded because he was already gone. I talked about the guilt, the what-ifs, the way my phone still shows his contact, and I can't bring myself to delete it because deleting it feels like agreeing that he's really gone. I talked about how my ex-girlfriend told me I needed to move forward, and how that phrase makes me want to break something because forward implies there's somewhere to go and there's nowhere to go. There's just here. When I finished, the woman sitting next to me, mid-50s, lost her son 2 years ago, reached over and put her hand on my arm and didn't say anything. Didn't need to. The guy across the circle who lost his brother nodded and said the ramen text. and his eyes were wet, and I understood that he had his own version of that text. The last mundane message you sent to someone before their death that now reads like the most important sentence you ever wrote. I drove home after that and sat in my apartment and cried for the first time in probably 2 months. Not the numb, empty kind of crying I did in the first few weeks after his death. The kind that actually releases something. My therapist has been telling me that grief isn't linear and that the crying comes back in waves, and the key is to let it happen instead of choking it down. He was right. It came and it went, and afterward I felt like I'd set something down that I'd been carrying in my chest for weeks. That night, I texted my best friend's sister. Went to group tonight. Talked about him. The ramen text. She wrote back. He would have tried the ramen place. He would have ordered the spiciest thing on the menu and made you try it and filmed you crying. I laughed. Out loud, alone in my apartment. At 10 p.m. on a Tuesday, I laughed. Because she was exactly right. That's exactly what he would have done. So here's where things stand. I'm single. I'm in therapy every Thursday at 4:30. I'm in grief group every Tuesday at 7. I'm eating regular meals again. Not because food tastes better, but because I promised my therapist I'd try, and I keep my promises. I've gained back about 8 of the 12 pounds I lost. My supervisor told me last week that my work has improved and asked if I wanted to lead a project next quarter. I said yes. My ex hasn't contacted me directly since the breakup call. Her family stopped after the mom conversation. I changed the lock on my apartment and left her stuff in a box by the front desk of her building. She sent a mutual friend to pick up her key. Clean enough. I don't hate her. I want to be clear about that. I think she genuinely loved me in the way she knew how. But her version of love had a clause in it. She'd support me through crisis as long as the recovery didn't change me in ways she didn't control. The moment therapy started making me stronger, started making me ask questions, set boundaries, recognize patterns, she experienced that as a threat. And instead of examining why her partner's mental health treatment scared her, she tried to shut it down. Then she tried to surveil it. Then she tried to turn her family into a pressure campaign. The thing is, and my therapist helped me see this, she probably does believe her version. She probably genuinely thinks the therapist brainwashed me. Because the alternative is accepting that the boyfriend who used to absorb everything without pushing back grew a spine and decided her behavior wasn't acceptable, and that version requires her to be the problem. Nobody wants to be the problem. It's easier to blame the guy with a notepad. I'm not angry. I'm just done. Some of y'all asked in the comments of my original post if I'd ever considered couples therapy. I did, back before everything blew up. I suggested it once, early on, when the stop talking about us in therapy arguments first started. I said maybe if she was uncomfortable with what I was sharing, she could come to a session and see what it's actually like. She said, "I'm not going to therapy. There's nothing wrong with me." And that sentence, right there, is the whole story. She didn't think therapy was unnecessary for me. She thought it was unnecessary for her. She was fine with me going as long as she believed it was about my dead friend and my depression, things that were my problems, not hers. The moment she realized the conversations included her behavior, included the relationship, included the way she contributed to my mental health picture, it became threatening. Because therapy wasn't supposed to look at her. It was supposed to fix me so I could go back to being the version of myself she was comfortable with. I'm not going back to that version. That version was killing me. Not dramatically. Not in the way my best friend died. In the slow way. The swallowing everything way. The not eating way. The sitting on the bathroom floor at work way. That version was a guy who thought coping meant enduring. And enduring meant silence. And silence meant strength. It doesn't. Silence means silence. And I'm done being quiet. Thursday at 4:30, I'll sit in the same chair I've been sitting in for 9 months. My therapist will ask how my week was. I'll tell him. All of it. The grief group, the breakup aftermath, the brother, the mom, the ramen text. He'll listen. He'll ask questions. He might say something I don't want to hear. And I'll leave feeling like the weight shifted, even if it didn't get lighter. That's not brainwashing. That's the only thing that's kept me from going under. To my best friend, I'm still here, man. And I'm finally getting the help I should have asked for years ago. I think you'd be proud of that. I think you'd also roast me for posting this on Reddit, but that's fair. To everyone reading this, if someone tells you that your healing is inconvenient, that person is not safe to heal around. Find the people who are. They exist. Sometimes they're in a circle of folding chairs on a Tuesday night, eating stale coffee and sharing the worst things that ever happened to them. And somehow, that room is the safest place you've ever been. I'm logging off this account. Take care of each other. And if you're struggling, really struggling, please talk to someone. A therapist, a group, a hotline, a friend at 3 a.m. Anything. Because the alternative is a 6 a.m. phone call that nobody should ever have to receive. If you or someone you know is experiencing a mental health crisis, the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is available 24/7. Call or text 988.